This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are two Syracuse sports reporters with a baseball podcast. We're coming to you after the Mets have been through a little bit of trouble, including, but not limited to, the Subway Series, and trouble even within the media a little bit here.
Womp, womp.
So we're going to be getting into all of that on today's episode. Be sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe on our episodes. It really helps us out. Thanks for being here. We're so happy to have you here with us. I think we had to start with the Subway Series. Makes sense to start there. The Mets lost 2 out of 3 to the Yankees in the Bronx in the first half of the Subway Series. It was unfortunate.
Yes. To say that this is a week that may have you asking, why am I a Mets fan? Really, the title of this podcast has never felt more pertinent. Yeah, let's just get into it. We'll get into Soto in a second, but let's talk about the X's and O's for a minute, all right? Saturday was their lone win, 3-2 win. They kind of eke one out. Canning had a really, really good start, 2 earned runs. Lindor hit the sacrifice fly to win it, and Diaz closed it out. All right, not a blowout by any means, but tidy little win.
But also gritty. I have to say,
Gritty.
I just can't go over that as though Diaz wasn't awesome.
Yeah.
Because he really was.
Yeah.
I mean, his hit, like when he was able to strike out Aaron Judge.
I know.
It was perfect. And you don't always know what you're going to get with Edwin Diaz, and especially in a big time moment like that.
Yeah.
I did feel like that was a bright spot to know that he's performing well under pressure early.
And Lindor came through with the sacrifice fly in the top of the 9th. Lindor, Mr. Clutch. If somebody on that team is Mr. Clutch lately, it's not a lot of them, but it's Lindor.
Captain?
Captain. Then Sunday, the 8-2, this was just sort of a mess. Everybody and their mother was watching Sunday Night Baseball. I have a stat that's pretty remarkable that tells you just how alive and well baseball is in New York, because that Sunday Night Baseball broadcast was, according to Anthony DiComo, averaged 2.5 million viewers, peaked at 3 million, making it the most watched Sunday Night Baseball game in 7 years. It's also the most watched 2025 MLB game on any platform. Most watched Sunday Night Baseball game in 7 years is nothing to sneeze at. New York baseball, alive and well. But anyways, the Mets had a meltdown on the national stage because what else would they do? It was really right there for the taking, right? It's 2-2. It's tied until the bottom of the 8th. Peterson has a beautiful start that the ESPN announcers ignored. And Brazoban, he strikes out Volpe with the bases loaded. Everybody, you really felt like they were going to come through and win that game, especially after the Brazoban strikeout. And then Ryan Stanek just said, hold my beer. Let me just come in and blow everything up. Bellinger hits a grand slam off of Genesis Cabrera. Alonso can't throw. Basically, he blamed the loss on himself because of that absolute airmail basically into the stands. And that was that. All of a sudden, it was 8-2, disaster class complete.
I do appreciate that accountability, for the record.
I do.
I know that can only go so far, but I appreciate the fact that he said that. There was 1 out in that inning, so it wouldn't have ended the inning, but still, it was just really a bizarro play from him, not something that I feel like you generally speaking see, and who knows what could have went differently. I don't personally blame the loss on him because of one throw, but it goes, or I guess it's a small example of a bigger problem, which is that the infield defense is struggling right now.
Yeah, Alonso then did it again on Monday against the Red Sox, had another little throwing mishap. Keith Hernandez went as far as to say on Monday's broadcast that Alonso has the yips, which I would say is accurate. We're not feeling like we can do those little tosses right now. So yeah, they lose the Subway Series. Basically, they had every opportunity to win that last game on Sunday. Bullpen coughs it up. Thank you. Good night. Everybody on Yankees land acts like they don't care about the Subway Series until they come out on the positive side of it, and that's all I'll say there. But yes, like you were saying, the infield defense is currently sort of rearing its ugly head, right? We've had our eyes on this for a while. We've been monitoring it. We know that Vientos is never going to win a Gold Glove at third base, but that has become more and more of a problem lately. He had multiple errors in the series, multiple not easy, but stuff that you want your everyday third baseman, plays you want him to be able to make. Alonso, like we said, has forgotten how to throw, and really the only solution there is one or both of them needs to DH on a regular basis, especially with no Jesse Winker. I mean, Starling Marte gives you nothing. I'm not even interested in that conversation. Put Vientos or Alonso at DH more often.
I have thought for a while it's high time to be giving Brett Baty the reps at third base and put Vientos in the DH spot. I get it. Last year was a good year for him, but he is not grandfathered into that position.
No,
Come on now.
no.
There is still room for growth. And if Baty right now has the hot hand, like I told you all he would last week and the week before that, been playing well at third base because that is where he feels comfortable, why not give him the reps? I don't understand that.
I don't either, especially like I said, with Winker out, right? Winker's a guy who's going to occupy your DH role when he's healthy. He's not. Starling Marte's a shell. Like, I don't understand really the concept, and I think it's becoming more pressing after this series, so we'll probably see Mendoza mix it up a bit. Even on Monday against the Red Sox first game, Brett Baty is there at third base and made a couple really fantastic plays, I should note. So I don't know if it's your long-term solution, but it's certainly your short-term solution. Play Baty in the infield at third base, DH Vientos for the time being. Alonso at first. I saw someone even float the idea, maybe you move Vientos to first sometimes. You play Baty at third and you DH Alonso. Mix it up.
I know what you mean. For some reason, I feel uncomfortable with the idea of that. I feel like just because Pete Alonso had a couple bad throws doesn't mean that he shouldn't be continuing to get his reps every single day. That being said, I absolutely think that the Mets, almost in a way, have gotten a little lucky. I'm not saying it's lucky that Jesse Winker is no longer with the team at this moment, but it does open up doors and opportunity for you to be able to mix and match.
Yeah.
Try some different pieces in some different areas to see what works. And you never know. I honestly think that sometimes, even for a player like Vientos, if he, for whatever reason, is not hitting maybe in the way that we've seen him hit in the past, I think sometimes when you put a player in a DH role and they can just solely focus on their hitting, that can change things too, just from a mental standpoint. Couldn't hurt to try it and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not giving up on Vientos at third base. I mean, it's his second year as a full-time starter, but do I think that you can mix and match a little better? I mean, at this point, he's costing you runs. He's costing you outs. His outs above average, which is a defensive metric, is one of the worst in the league right now. So it's May. I'm not saying, to hell with Mark Vientos. I'm a big fan of Mark Vientos, but like you said, maybe it even gives him a little bit of an opportunity to focus a little more at the plate, and it could just be a good refresher for a couple weeks. And then, as a byproduct, you get Baty some reps too, which obviously he's been looking for quite a long time. So defensively, that's half the problem. The other half the problem is that they have forgotten how to hit with runners in scoring position.
I have an interesting tweet on that note. Laura Albany's tweet coming in hot.
Love her.
She said, love her. She said, Mets dropped the game to the Red Sox 3-1. It's the first time they've lost 3 in a row this year. That feels pertinent. They were 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position and left 6 on base. They've lost 4 of 5 and are hitting 135 with runners in scoring position in that span. That's pretty bad.
Tough. Pretty bad. Yeah, the Bats are in a cold spell. I mean, it happens. It's still May, right? It's not like they're playing. I mean, last night in Boston, pretty cold. This weekend in the Bronx, pretty cold. It's not like they're playing in, 75-degree weather exactly. But to say that they're in a cold spell is an understatement. They last hit a home run. We are filming this on Tuesday afternoon, prior to the Tuesday night Red Sox game. They last hit a home run last Tuesday in Pittsburgh, and it was Brett Baty. They have gone 6 days without hitting one out. I mean, you don't see that every day.
No, honestly, that doesn't feel right to me, especially considering the way we've seen them hit throughout the first part of the season.
Yeah.
But like you said, I guess it does happen. The question is, what do you do about it? Baseball is such a weird individual mental sport, and I think baseball is also the kind of sport where hits lead to more hits. They're contagious. Mm-hmm. So if everybody is sort of having a problem, what exactly do you do to get out of a spell like that? I know that you might not know that answer, but it's truly something I think about. How do you get out of a situation like that?
Yeah, Mendoza first indicated last night, that it's becoming a problem, right? Some of the individual numbers with runners in scoring position are just terrible. Soto's hitting 128 with runners in scoring position. We'll get into that in a moment. But Mendoza said
Stick around, folks.
Stick around, please. Mendoza said that it's becoming a mental thing for several players. He said that last night. He said at times we're taking really good pitches to hit, being passive, then we're chasing. We're not pulling the trigger on good pitches to hit. And that has translated to just 10 runs in the last 6 games. So I definitely agree with you. I know, get the sports psychologist, I'm not saying that they're all, mentally off a cliff, but it is contagious, right? Like we saw that so much last year down the stretch. When you are stringing together rallies and 2-out rallies and runners in scoring position, guys are coming through, that type of stuff, energy does feed off of each other on a team.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that just for the purpose of switching things up, in an attempt to get a different outcome, that it would be worth it to switch up or critique the lineup a little bit just to see if something changes?
I saw someone, yes, in short, I saw someone float the idea yesterday of, or it might have been in the booth actually, it might have been Gary or Keith, float the idea of, maybe you hit Soto leadoff for a while, right? I'm not saying Lindor's the problem at leadoff because he certainly hasn't been, but there's all this talk about, Soto doesn't have protection with Alonso behind him and this, that, and the other thing. Maybe you put him leadoff so then he has Lindor and Soto behind him and then a Vientos or whatever. I mean, the more protection he has, it can't exactly be a bad thing, right?
And I'm genuinely saying from the mental side, change doesn't happen unless change happens. Why not try it, switch something up, and then maybe some of the players, even just from a mental standpoint, think, hey, now that the lineup is different, there's more of an opportunity to hit. You just never know in those kinds of situations where the hits are going to come from. So I don't know. I think that'd be something interesting or worthwhile. But yeah, I mean, it's a problem, and I think it's something that has to be fixed promptly, or else you are going to start to see that the really hot Mets that started the year is not going to be the Mets that you continue to see.
Yeah, all I have to say is when the Mets are going well, like when the Mets are right, like at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, it feels like they're coming through every time in the big moments. For the last week to 2 weeks, it's felt like they're coming through none of the time in the big moments. Can I just get it in between? Like, can I just live in like a 75% realm?
It feels like...
Why is it all or nothing?
You know how we feel that way about Edwin Diaz?
Yes.
It feels like his performances are sort of a microcosm of what you're seeing the Mets have that situation going on right now. I feel like with Edwin Diaz, it's either masterclass, gorgeous, never a doubt, or completely a doubt. I'm so nervous, and that's sort of how I feel lately. Is those extremes. Listen, you're gonna lose to the Yankees, fine, but 8-2.
8-2 when,
That's
listen, I
embarrassing.
get the grand slam, I get the bullpen had a meltdown, I get Alonso can't throw, but like it was a 2-2 game in the bottom of the 8th. And then you see that final score. Yes, I understand the grand slam, but like it's a lot. And it was sort of the icing on the cake for the Yankees fans, right? To the whole thing. The first series with the Soto, it was so drummed up in the media. I didn't like it. Of course I'm not going to like it, but I didn't like it.
And I'm not going to sit here now and say, well, it was just 3 regular season games. Because a week ago, we were like, oh, this matters. There's some bragging rights here. So that's still true.
Yeah.
I think that's still true, even though they lost. I think it was a bummer. This was the first time Juan Soto, yes, Mets uniform, it was played up. The Yankees fans are turning around and not looking at him in the outfield. I thought there was some juice there, and it was that one opportunity where you could have, at least for a few games, there could have been bragging rights until the last part of the Subway Series. To say, hey, now that Juan Soto is here, even if it wasn't because of Juan Soto, we have him and we won.
Yeah.
And we have him, we didn't win, and he didn't play that good.
I know.
So that's the reality.
What I will say is that I think this whole thing is a little interesting, this whole Juan Soto thing with the Mets and the Yankees. Like, not to downplay it, but Juan Soto, this would be an entirely different story if Juan Soto, was drafted by the Yankees and came up as a Yankee and came through the farm system, and then 5 years in, he's choosing to go across town to the Mets. Like, Juan Soto was a rental. He played 1 year in the Bronx.
Yep.
And he played for 2 teams before that. 2 teams before that. Yes. So I get why it matters so much. It matters to us. Like we said, it does matter to us, and it matters that he chose the Mets. But at the same time, the Yankees fans acting like they own him, like the Nationals deserve to say that they owned him. They drafted him, and he came up through their system. That's all I'll say. And the Nationals are a division rival. So it's almost like I just need everybody to calm down on both ends because, yes, the Mets, that was exciting to see them sign Soto take him away from the Yankees. But he was not a Yankees legendary guy that came up and owed his whole life to the Yankees.
I hear what you're saying. I think it was a pride thing, if nothing else. It's the fact that it's New York versus New York. It's the fact that most of the time, what I really think it is that Yankees fans think that any player would choose to be on the Yankees.
Well, right.
And Mets fans know that some of the time that's true, but some of the time it's not.
Yeah.
And I think this was one of those big examples where it feels like a slap in the face to Yankees fans who truly, I think most of them believe that, the Yankees are a better organization. And certainly there is no doubting there has been more success historically. So I certainly see where that comes from. Not necessarily saying that's incorrect. I'm just saying I think that's why you're getting this sort of weird jealousy. But yes, to say that it has made its way into the national media would be the understatement of the year. We're going to go through a couple of things that happen here because we have to talk about it. Juan Soto really has been in the public eye.
He's been in the trenches.
For a couple of different reasons. All right. I want to just start here. which is a video that comes out that is essentially showing off and display. It happened during the game, but you know how SNY and all of these other, Yankees videos come out and they just want to show you the clips that matter to the account. And you see that Juan Soto hits what could have, I guess, been a single, but ultimately is not because he didn't hustle down the first base line. I would like to know at this time what you thought about that and the clips that came out and how you thought it was represented in the media.
Okay, I think there's a dual-ended issue here, right? There was the fact that there's the not hustling situation, which I'll get into in a minute. Then there's the whole he didn't have a great Subway Series thing, right? We can't argue that. He had a very bad Subway Series. He was like 1 for 10. He got on base like 5 times, but it was a bunch of walks. He hasn't been terrible, like by any means. He has like 5 homers in the month of May. His OPS this month is like 964. He hasn't been terrible, but I get it. You're paying the guy $765 million. You want him to be what you paid for, which is excellent. And he has not been excellent by any means. So he's already going into this series a little bit down for the count, right? It's been a tough first couple of months if you're Juan Soto. I think just with all the media attention, with adjusting to being on a new team that you're going to be on for the foreseeable future, and then you're still in the same town. It's like when you break up with the ex, but the ex is in the same town. Like you're running into the ex. Okay,
brutal,
tough. So there's all that. Then we hit the Subway Series, and like you said, there's some hustling questions. Now, there was the ground out that you're referring to that he didn't hustle down the line. And then on Monday in the Red Sox game, he hit one off the green monster. That was the longest single you'll ever see in your life because he wasn't running out of the box. And it would have been a double. And I get it, weird stuff happens at Fenway, ricocheted kind of weird off the monster, but it was a single. And it was the longest single you'll ever see. He did make up for it by then subsequently stealing second base. So made up for it. Mm-hmm. He's doing great, by the way, on the base paths, I should say. Mm-hmm. Stealing bases wise. But it should have been a double. Now that's 2. Now you're at 2. And the discourse that sort of followed post-game yesterday is really what's starting to alarm me. I was holding out on getting alarmed for a long time with is Juan Soto happy as a Met? Why isn't he smiling? Why is he smiling when he sees Aaron Judge? Like, that's all a lot for me, all right? Like, you can cherry pick those moments all you want to. He smiles all the time in the Mets dugout. But the hustling situation with Mendoza really is not where I need it to be. So that's what I said. So Monday postgame after the Red Sox loss, Carlos Mendoza is basically pressured by reporters, and he says he intends to talk to him about not hustling. And then Soto, I assume these were going on at, I think Mendoza, we were there earlier this season. So Mendoza sort of speaks first up at the podium, and then Soto speaks secondarily. But it's not like he, was sitting there listening to what Mendoza said. So he didn't know that he said that. Said, quote, "I think I'm hustling very hard. If you saw me tonight, you could tell." That to go on in the span of about a 5 to 10 minute period, Mendoza said, yeah, it's a problem. I got to talk to him about it. And Soto saying, no, I think I'm hustling. That is where I'm starting to have some alarm bells raised. Like, as Sandy Alderson would say, if you know, Yoenis Cespedes, it's some bad optics, to say the least.
Yes. And I think, listen, what it comes down to for me, former athlete, you just don't do that. They're paying you over $700 million. Forget about they're paying that money so they want you to be excellent. They just want you to hustle down the line like everybody else does on the Mets. Brandon Nimmo sprints to first base when he gets walked. Mm-hmm. That's what I want to say.
I'm going to need you to run. For $765 million, I'm going to need a run.
You know what I mean? I need to know that you're hustling. I don't even think Juan Soto is really all that fast, but I need to see you trying. I need to see you sprinting. I need to see you giving 100% of your effort at all times. And honestly, Juan Soto aside, that has always pissed me off. If you hit a baseball that is not absolutely surefire on its way out of the ballpark, start your run. Start your engine. I do not want to see the bat here and you're just looking, hoping, and waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Run.
No, I know.
Go.
I completely agree.
Get going.
I agree.
And I'm not seeing that from him. I don't know whether or not Juan Soto would have made it to first base, but the point is we'll never know. The media stuff aside, I honestly almost don't even care about that. But that is a character thing to me.
Yeah.
You need to run. You're an athlete. That's what you're getting paid to do. You have to do it. And not seeing it, makes it harder for me to defend Juan Soto, quite honestly.
Yeah, well, I sort of also think it's an interesting juxtaposition, right? I just mentioned he's like on pace to break his career stolen base record. He's stealing bases at a pretty good clip. So we have the effort to steal the bases, and I mean, at that point you're sprinting second base. But why don't you just run hard to begin with? It's odd.
That makes it worse to me.
Yeah,
because that actually means that, like you said, if he is doing well on the base path and he is on pace to break these records, that means he is capable of doing it. He's just choosing not to. And that's an attitude thing.
Yeah.
And I really don't like that.
That's what I'm sort of getting at is I was really like chalking the attitude stuff up to media, dramatics for a while. I am edging towards the point of feeling mildly concerned, especially with that. Listen, post-game, I know that he didn't know what Mendoza said, and Mendoza didn't know what he said last night. But I am inching towards my concern with Juan Soto, which is that, and I've sort of felt this from the beginning, but I think I wanted to be proved wrong at the beginning of this year, and I haven't been, is that like Juan Soto was going to feel like he was above everyone and everything on the Mets because they paid him the most money they've ever paid anybody. Like, he needs to know that this is still Carlos Mendoza's your manager, and Mendoza can and should yell at you if you're not running. I'm not making anything up. Maybe he will, and Mendoza will sit him down and they'll have a nice heart-to-heart talk about it, and everything will be smoothed over. But there's sort of an interesting situation on any team, right? The Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani. Any team, when you have this guy that is your superstar, that is one rung up above every single other person, even Lindor and Alonso and everybody, there is a, like, not even a 1A and a 1B. There is a, top level, and it's only Juan Soto at it. When you have that situation, you need to have some parameters in place so that the guy doesn't feel like he runs the entire show and that he can get reprimanded for a few things. It is still a job. He still works for the New York Mets. Steve Cohen pays him. Like, if they're not happy with something, which we haven't heard from Mendoza or the organization at all, that's complete speculation. But if they're not happy with an attitude thing or a hustling thing, you have to answer to them. And that's what I'm getting worried about.
You're an employee, so of course there's going to be performance reviews. That's how it should be and would be in any other workplace, especially, like you said, when you're getting paid that amount of money. Here's the other thing. Everybody on the Mets pretty much big into accountability. You hear Pete Alonso saying the loss is his fault when he overthrows it. You hear Lindor say it's my bad when he makes errors. You're not hearing that when Juan Soto is being asked about this. Time for me to go on a rant about Juan Soto and his lack of accountability. I said this to you earlier today. Emotionally mature people don't avoid accountability. We're not seeing that from him in the response that he gave, which was something to the effect of, unless you have the quote,
I was hustling.
I was hustling. No, you weren't.
Yeah.
And we all saw it because it aired on TV.
Right.
So everyone, of course, is going to have an emotional response to that that's not positive. And we would have if he would have said, you know what, you're right, I should be running harder.
Oh, completely different conversation.
I get it that Mendoza is the leader of the ship here and is going to speak to him, I'm sure. But Juan Soto is a grown-ass man.
Yeah.
He should be taking accountability on his own. He's an adult.
I agree. And to go along with that accountability, to sort of wrap up this Juan Soto discourse here, Bob Klapsich of NJ.com wrote quite the article. I mean, it was a Juan Soto hate piece. Really, just, we cannot even. He said he put on a few pounds around the middle. Like, there were insults left, right. It was a lot from Bob.
All right. First of all, what?
No, from Bob, it was a lot. But what I will say is, he did reveal a detail that is going along with the accountability thing that you're saying right now that is making it increasingly difficult for me to sit here and wholeheartedly defend Juan Soto. He said, well, there was the whole thing where he was supposed to wear the mic during the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. They mic up a player during the thing on the field. He was supposed to do it. They advertised that he was going to do it. Yes. And then all of a sudden, Brandon Nimmo was doing it. Apparently, he didn't want to do it. Now, even that, even that, I like it, but I've always thought it is kind of a little crazy. Like, they're out there, like, in the field, and they're, like, trying to talk to ESPN. It's a lot. Maybe you don't, fine.
True as that may be, everybody else does it when they're asked.
I know. So he didn't want to do that. So he didn't do it. But then here's where it gets even worse. In this NJ.com article from Bob, it says, just as Soto turned his back on ESPN, he did the same to reporters who were waiting to speak to him in the post-game clubhouse. Soto got dressed and began walking towards the door. He told a Mets official he'd be back to answer questions after seeing family members outside. Soto never returned. I'm not liking that. I am not liking that. That is where it starts to feel like, to me, what I said before. You feel like you're above some things. You feel like you can tell the Mets media guy that you're going to talk to the media. You feel like you're above the media. You feel like you're above any person, Mendoza, Cohen, Stearns, whoever is going to say, you stand there and answer questions.
Now, this is not me coming after my guy, Bob, who I'm essentially hearing about for the first time today, but is this a credible, you believe, account of everything that happened? This is...
I mean, he works for NJ.com and he was there. Like, NewJersey.com has some good writers.
And if he was there, I think that you have to trust that, full stop. I think, again, Juan Soto is, like you said, a very talented player. He's also a new player on the Mets. So do I expect him... He also is a little younger, let's be fair, than some of the other players. So do I expect him to come in and be the leader? No. But I think when you're a talented player...
When you're the superstar.
Especially when you're the superstar on a franchise in your first year, all I can speak for is me personally. And I'd want to make a good first impression.
Yeah.
I'd want to come across as a leader. You know, your actions are really loud in that first year, and they speak volumes about your character. Again, this is not me doing a hate piece on Juan Soto. I need to see more in order to make that decision. And honestly, what I want to know the most, and I don't know this, so Yankees fans lock in, what was his demeanor like on the Yankees? Are Yankees fans surprised to see this? Or was this, generally speaking, Juan Soto's general demeanor? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'd like to.
I mean, I think everybody's going to say that he's sort of not hid behind, but he could take a backseat to Aaron Judge. But you might look at the Mets and say, why can't he take a backseat to Francisco Lindor? And he can, I think, right? If the Mets name a captain, it's going to be Francisco Lindor. I think everybody's in agreement on that. But when you're the superstar signing, there's going to be a lot of eyes on you. And to say that he hasn't exactly met that moment yet on the field or in the media would be an understatement.
Can I just ask, our director who does this show is actually a Yankees fan. Paul, I don't know if you have the capability to put the camera on you, but if you do, would you mind telling us what Juan Soto's demeanor was on the Yankees? Do you have the capability to do that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think he had a good time playing for the Yankees. There was no pressure. You had Aaron Judge. You had a lot of components of the team that he could just be himself.
Okay. I'm not sure if you guys were able to hear that or not, but he essentially said he thought that Juan Soto had a good time on the Yankees. Felt like he could be himself.
It just feels like the eyeballs have multiplied because not only do you have, right, when he was a Yankee, the Yankees fans were like this on him, right? We're like totally overarching. Now that he's a Met and he chose the Mets over the Yankees, it's the Mets fans and the Yankees fans like this and the rest of the world because he signed the biggest contract in baseball, right? So, I gotta just talk about the private jet here before we wrap up because Jetgate was a saga. All right, so to say that there's been a lot this week with Juan Soto. Holy hell, not even enough time to get into it all.
What do you got,
Michael
Ashley?
K's rapping about how his family wanted him to be a Met, so he chose the Mets. Juan Soto actually wanted to be a Yankee. Can I just say, Michael K spreads falsities. I mean, can you imagine Gary Cohen just like lying out of his ass? Because I can't.
He just said that randomly?
He said it on ESPN New York on Monday. That was his take on the whole thing, that it was his family that made him be a Met. Now, the family experience was important to him as well, is well documented on this podcast, but Michael K just honestly makes shit up. Anyway, Carl Ravitch of ESPN accidentally lit the world on fire, and I think it truly was accidental. I don't think he meant to do this. On Sunday Night Baseball, he was talking about how Soto's contract does include family-oriented perks, specifically charter flights for his family to attend road games, which was part of the pitch from the Mets, right? You get a suite, we'll fly your family out, whatever. Then everybody just sort of twisted that to mean that I don't even know how WFAN was like saying it was just.
No, how did it
the
get
New York
here?
media is so toxic, and everybody's toxic.
How did it get there?
I don't know how we got there, but somehow we got to Juan Soto is flying private from the team separately to away games. That's just not what is happening, and a PASSAN bomb was needed to justify things, and you know something is serious if Jeff PASSAN is whipping up the Twitter app.
Like, he needed to get involved. Jeff PASSAN was probably enjoying quality time with his family. Don't wrap him up in this garbage.
Jeff PASSAN in baseball is
Enough.
like the overarching media father that, like, you know, just like reprimands you, like, no. But you know it's serious. He doesn't reprimand unless it is actually serious.
And he needed to legitimately break the news to say that is not true.
There is no private jet for Juan Soto. He flies with the team.
This was like one long game of New York media telephone, and I am not interested in playing.
No, I don't. With the whisper down the lane got really, really convoluted at
This
the
is
end.
one of
That's
those
all I have to
bad
say.
ones. It got messed up at the end.
Not to mention, with the private plane thing, I was going to say, first of all, the booth flies on the plane, right? Gary, Keith, and Ron fly on the Mets plane. So do, to my knowledge, a couple of other beat writers. I'm not sure, maybe Anthony DeComo, but like the guys who work for the Mets or MLB, the team, also get
Howie
seats on that
Rose,
charter
right?
plane. Howie Rose. We would have known by now if Juan Soto was flying separately. Like, you think you're going to uncover that in mid-Met? Like, no. And that is just not what Carl Ravitch said. Leave Carl out of it.
I was going to say, he's normally a pretty aces guy, so
Yeah.
I absolutely would not anticipate that he would go on there and say something false. He is nothing if not factually accurate. So enough of that. But yeah, I think the long story short is, believe it or not, I feel like you and I are actually pretty moderate on this topic. I feel like the things we said were pretty well said. Like, we don't want to hear the lies and the
You being like, I feel like
rumors.
we're pretty well spoken.
I feel like we're pretty great, and people should listen to the podcast and get us to 10,000 subscribers.
Please. No, I think we just see both sides of it. Like,
Right.
Like this whole rant can be summarized in, we're not happy with the hustling and the attitude, especially this last week from what we've seen. But I do think some of it with the Yankees and some of it with how he's performed is a little dramatic. It is not even Memorial Day. I'm going to be dramatic, though, and say that the Mets fell out of first place today and the Phillies surpassed them. So I actually just, good night. You know what? I'm all done.
Here
for
comes the
today.
crash out.
Here comes the crash out.
We got to get off the air.
Rally the troops.
Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We will see you back here when the next big thing happens. One quick note. We are not actually going to be filming next Monday, correct?
Next Wednesday. We'll see you next Wednesday.
We will see you next Wednesday. Have a great week.